Before we get into that video about why monsters are so disgusting, we need to talk about why this monster didn't catch on, and why this one did. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but monsters transgress boundaries. It's actually a defining characteristic. Ghosts, for instance. They are an apparition of a dead person that haunts the realm of the living. They turn up when people are in doubt about the boundary between the living and the dead. Frankenstein's creature is a composite of several corpses, but he's alive. Like the ghost, he crosses the boundaries between the living and the dead, but he does so from the other direction. The creature of the Black Lagoon. He crosses the boundaries between human and fish. He didn't really catch on in our time because, well, this is a boundary about which we have very few doubts. Same with this guy. But the wolfman or werewolf has always intrigued us. His story goes back a long way. He can be found in the myths and folklore of medieval Europe, but he pops up in various cultures around the world. You see, it all has to do with identity. Human identity has always been built in part around the line that separates us from animals. This notion becomes a part of our collective identity. We are not animals. But then we also see human beings behaving very badly, and it's not just isolated incidents, behaving like animals. And maybe sometimes we also experience animal impulses that we suppress. And then we have a niggling doubt about that boundary. When it gets strong enough, the werewolf shows up and forces us to face what we might be and not exactly who we think we are. Before the 1800s, we civilized Europeans were pretty confident that we were superior to animals. Our identity was in part built upon this idea. Then some people, including Charles Darwin, started promulgating the idea that human beings evolved from animals. This weakened the barrier between humans and animals. This created an identity crisis, and the monsters arrived in the form of the werewolf and Mr. Hyde to attack our identity at that point where it was now vulnerable, at the point where we differentiated ourselves from animals. The Victorians had more boundaries than anybody before or since, I think, and their monster crossed all of them. That's why the vampire is so complex. I made this video about Count Dracula. All these monsters were popular because they resonated. They resonated with our doubts about reality and about ourselves. And that's what zombies do for us modern people. The nature of the boundaries that monsters transgress changes from culture to culture and time to time. As our conception of reality changes, our monsters also change. The breaching of the boundary between human and animal doesn't really bother us too much, so we don't have too many man-beast monsters running around these days. There are some monsters that force us to consider the existence of a spiritual world. There are quite a few demonic horror-type movies, if I am correct in interpreting what I see in the trailers. These monsters transgress boundaries between physical and spiritual, but they are not nearly as popular as zombies. Zombies transgress only physical boundaries. And we'll look at one of these physical boundaries in my next video, Zombies and the Abject. I'll give you a hint. It has something to do with why they are so disgusting. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.